New False Count Anywhere. It is Tuesday night, June 3rd, 2025. We are on the way to Money in the Bank this coming Saturday, although it is a pretty active wrestling weekend coming up in general. And of course, we are joined here by the co-host of False Count Anywhere, my man, Mr. Rob the Genius himself. He's 1/3, of course, of the Great Mind Wrestling Podcast, as well as host of the Rob the Genius Podcast. And among many other things he does, great things he does. Rob, what's up, brother?
Hey, good to be back, man. Always a pleasure.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We got a lot to talk about today in the podcast. But before we get to folks, I get a little pissed off. I'm gonna give you about a couple minutes to the floor. Your Knicks are out of the playoffs, and then we get the news today. Tom Thibodeau fired as head coach. The floor is yours. I'll have a podcast set for myself tomorrow night to discuss this more in detail. But I want you speak your piece, your thoughts on the development today in the NBA.
Okay, so not surprised. Because well, it's funny because they overachieved this season.
You think so?
Nobody was. Yeah, no, none of us were expecting. No.
I haven't. No, hold on, Rob. I haven't in the finals this year. When the year started, when the season started,
You had in the finals.
My prediction was when the season started was Knicks and Mavericks in October
finals?
in the finals. Yes.
Okay, well, you are one of one. Okay.
Yeah. Now I didn't think they'd get that far. Now, based on what we saw in the regular season, I didn't think they would get to the finals. So it's a weird little dance you play here with me because on one hand, if you want to go by my October predictions, I had one in the finals. On the other hand, though, when I predicted stuff going to the playoffs, I haven't gone past Boston. So on one hand, yes, they did overachieve in some aspects because based on the material, based on the product we saw between October and April, yeah. So whatever. Go ahead, sorry.
Okay. So anyhow, okay. So well, okay. None of us, other than you, had them going this far. Okay. The consensus was that we would get to the second round, especially because if you look at how the season played out.
Correct.
The consensus was okay, we're going to get to the second round, and either and then because either Cleveland or Boston is going to put us out because we didn't beat either one of them all season in the regular season. So the consensus was that yes, either Cleveland or Boston was going to put us out in the second round, and whatever, right? And then we'll figure it out for next year. So we beat Boston in the second round, and then we get to the conference finals. And so on the one hand, they overachieved. On the other hand, it kind of exposed Thibodeau's weaknesses as a head coach. Mainly that he doesn't want to play people. He doesn't want to use his whole, the overworking of players became, and so that became a thing, and it got exposed. And then there was Kenny Smith selling inside the NBA that Thibodeau wouldn't play 9 guys in a baseball game. And that is very true. If you look at the way the minutes are distributed, he barely he plays the starting 5, and then maybe like 2 other guys, and that's about it. And it kind of it showed here, and it got exposed, and it's just I think he's Doug Collins,
Yeah, that's a great comp. That's a great comp.
Yeah, he can improve your team a great deal. If you're starting at the bottom.
Yeah.
You and he can get you if you do have a good team. then he can get you to the conference finals.
Yeah,
But
I'm with you 100%.
there's a he has a ceiling, and this is it. So if you're going to get further, got to get somebody else. Um, and so I think the first choice is Malone, who just got fired in Denver,
Yeah.
and he's from New York. Um, so I think he was an assistant there. So it's just, yeah, I mean, so it's just that's what it is. And that's no looks no shade on him. He's look, Thibodeau is a great coach. Okay, and again, he's great for getting you. He's great for getting you to break through, and he did that. And but now it's time to it is time to go to the next step. To go to the next step, you got to go with somebody else.
Yeah, and I think they made a calculation too. Also, the East next year is wide open, with the Tatum injury. Boston's is compromised now. They're probably going to even when Tatum get hurt, they're probably going to be selling parts anyway because that payroll. You look at the Eastern Conference next year. Milwaukee's in transition possibly. New York right now is right there with Indiana. I think Indiana's obviously a better team right now currently, but that doesn't mean that New York could beat them next year. I think you're making a calculation. Listen, we need to get on the gas now. If we're going to win a title next year or two with this core, we got to do it now. I've said all year long that Tom Thibodeau is a good coach, but there's a ceiling there. And if the Knicks were going to get to the next level, they have to move on for this guy. Um, and I hate to see people lose their jobs, but we've seen a story with Tom Thibodeau over and over again in Chicago, in Minnesota, and now in New York. He's a good coach. He can get you out of the cellar, make competitive, make you a competent team, but there's a ceiling. You're right. He's Doug Collins. He's Del Harris. He's Mark Jackson. You know, and who's to say the next coach they get will be the guy to put them on the top? Who knows? We shall see in the years to come.
Yeah,
But I have a lot of respect for Leon Rose in the Knicks front office to do what they did here because honestly, most teams be like, oh, you know what? Let's just keep things as is. No, I think they made a calculation, and I respect them for doing it. Stay on the gas. I really do. I think they knew. I think they knew even before the playoffs started they were going to do this, and they knew that unless they went to the finals, they were going to do this.
yeah. I think he would have had to get to the finals, and then to I think they'd have to get to the finals for him to save his job. And
Right.
but what would have been crazy though? I think if they had lost in the second round, he might not have gotten fired
If Boston
because
was still healthy, because I
well
think
they'd have met expectations, and I think there wouldn't have been like he wouldn't have gotten exposed as much because they're supposed to lose to Boston anyway. I don't think
right,
anybody.
true.
And so, look, I don't think now they did go up 2-0. So if they had collapsed and lost to Boston, then yeah, he probably would have got fired. But if they went out there and if like Boston went up 3-1 and then beat them in 5 or 6 games, I think it might sound crazy, but I think that's what people expected. And I think everybody would have just said, okay, well, that's what we figured.
Yeah.
But they beat Boston. I think well, just he got exposed. Like his coaching, his rotation.
To be
You know,
honest with you, he didn't get exposed in the playoffs. He got exposed during the season. Like I was saying this shit during the year that there was already people calling for his head back in February. So all the playoffs did was make it much more obvious.
well, yeah, I think
And
the playoff reinforced that, but
right, exactly.
and especially like this series because they gave away game one.
Yep.
They should have won game one. They blew it. And I think that really put this a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths
Yeah.
that that they gave away game one like that. And look, it's an entire different series if they win game one,
Mm-hmm.
right? But they literally gave away game one, and then also and then the fact that look, I mean, contract wise, look, this is going to be the team for the next couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, it is what it is. So,
Unless Giannis requests to go there, which was
but
then
I mean, the only problem with that is you got to trade so much to get him, though. I
yeah,
mean, so this is for the next year or two after this season. This is the roster, um, and they were good enough to look. They were up there, even if Tatum hadn't gotten injured, they were going to be up 3-2 on Boston. Um, because they were up big on Boston when Tatum got injured, so they'd have won that game regardless.
right. I
So
agree. Yeah,
they were good enough. This roster was good enough to get up 3-2 on Boston, and it was good enough that they should have been up 3-2 on Indiana because they should have won game one. Um, so looking at it from that standpoint, and this is again for the next couple of years, this is the roster you're going to have. So if you want to get past what they did, there's only one person you can swap out,
that's right.
and and there is a glaring red flag with how he coaches the team, and that's his rotations and how he doles out minutes. That is a glaring red flag, and so you have a reason. Like this isn't like some inexplicable kind of thing, right? So yeah, it's always up to him getting fired, um, and look, he's a great coach, and he will get another job. He should get another job,
And I think he will
but
get another job, but
yeah,
it
I
may
mean,
yeah.
but until he proves, until and look, until he breaks through and wins a championship, then he is Doug Collins. Um, and Larry Brown was that until he finally won one with Detroit. But Larry Brown was saying that he was the guy. He will fix your team. He will get you to a certain point, but then Larry Brown finally won one. Um, but so until he wins one, and this is what it is. He's that guy. He will improve your team. He will get it further. And then when it's time to go over the top, you need to get somebody else.
Right. Well, he got featured endeavored. Another guy. Now going into wrestling. You see the title of today's episode. Another guy that got featured endeavored. Unfortunately, is our man Ron Killings, also known as R Truth. Shocking, shocking development on Sunday that came out when he came
Yes.
on Twitter. His tweet here. He put out 11:12 a.m. on Sunday. I'm sorry to inform you all. I just got released from WWE. I wanted to thank WWE for the ride, but mostly I wanted to thank each and every one of you who was along for the ride. Thank you for all the love, support, and appreciation you give me over the years. Thank you. Um, our truth released by the WWE this Sunday. Strange enough, too. Also, he just had a big match against John Cena on the last main event. He actually wrestled also on Friday SmackDown as well too. So we're thinking, okay, well, this guy is now getting involved in a major storyline, and we believe that he's going to be a part of this Cena story as it develops, even down to the end of the year. So my first reaction when I saw this tweet, Rob, was that, oh, this is probably just a work. Probably this part of the story, and maybe this is saying this because whatever. Until you saw people's reactions, and everybody's reacting down the line. Then all the insiders are saying, yes, this is true. This happened. It's real. This kind of thing. The reaction across the board from fans to WWE employees and wrestlers and superstars and all like very unhappy, upset, and just quite shocked at his development. We have a lot. We have a lot here we can unpack on this story.
Yeah.
Your first thoughts on this breaking news on Sunday?
Okay. Well, so the first thing I saw was when Sean Ross Sapp reported it,
Right.
and so like I didn't see the tweet from R Truth himself because otherwise I would have thought, well, maybe this is a work or something.
Mm-hmm.
I think it held out some hope, but the first I saw was from Sapp, and he does not like he doesn't play around when it comes to reporting things like releases and whatnot. He doesn't he doesn't screw around with that stuff, and he doesn't play. So I saw that, and I was shocked, um, because like I said, he was just in a title match. Um, he just wrestled on Friday. They had, merchandise. They had T-shirts from, they had new T-shirts for him out in the store
Yep.
already. Like they had just released merchandise for him in the store. Um, and like all of like because I've follow some of like the YouTube numbers and stuff, and like all the stuff he's been doing lately has been doing really good. Um, so now his contract ran out. They didn't just like cut him loose. Um, but given like given all those things, I had no and there weren't any reports about that his contract was gonna be up, right?
Hmm.
We so I was shocked. I was like, really? And now I guess it shouldn't be too shocking because they have released people who were just on TV. They have released people who are who have been in the middle of storylines. Um, so I guess it shouldn't be too shocking at this point, but I figured that. Well, I just figured if they were going to if they were going to let him go, I figured they would have scaled back his they wouldn't have done all this stuff with him.
Right. And again, in a major storyline, it's not like even like Braun Strowman getting released like a couple weeks back. He wasn't in a major storyline. He was in a storyline on TV, but it wasn't on the storyline. This John Cena storyline is the number one storyline now in the company currently.
Yeah, and
It's very shocking. I'm very disappointing too. Also, seeing the reactions to, especially the authentic reactions to everybody. There's some wrestlers who actually took down WWE related stuff off their social media. I saw a report like Gunther, for example. Now, look, this could be me looking more into this than I should, but there's a lot of people
uh,
upset about this. A lot of people legitimately upset about it, and I think a lot of it too goes back to what we've been talking about on this podcast last couple weeks about TKO and what they're doing. And yes, this feels like a money thing, a money grab once again, and everything TKO has done with this company since taking over seems like everything is a money grab, and I get that, and that's their job is to make as much profit as possible. But at what point are you going to alienate fans? We keep look. I don't want to sound like a old fuddy duddy, and we're trying to be reasonable about this too, also. But at the same time, there is an audience that they start seeing things like this. You know, do they start to uh alienate certain fans? You're seeing people that they love being cut. Now, look, I don't think. Look, people are shocked now about this, and I think at some point they'll get over it. That's just reality. People will say, "Oh, this sucks." Blah, blah, blah. 5 days later, they're watching fucking SmackDown anyway, and then go on the shows. But
um,
this is to me is another example of TKO doing things that this doesn't look good optics wise.
yeah. Now, okay. Now, do I think people there's going to be some mass outrage that causes people just to quit watching in droves? No. But what happens is, it's like I've said before, it doesn't matter until it does,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't know when it's going to matter.
Yep.
And it's drip, drip, drip.
Yeah, it's another drip.
And this is our truth is somebody who he has this year he has really been adding something to the product.
Yeah.
Um, and he's also a very unique performer. He's one of the few people that can do the comedy stuff and do it really well. And there aren't that many people who can do it because look, pro wrestlers are not good actors in general, which is why when most of them when they get some type of acting gig, they barely get any lines. Okay, I
Yeah.
mean if you watch any of them when they get some other acting gig, they barely get to talk at all. They barely get a speaking part, and if they do is one or two lines. There's a reason for that because we grade them on a curve when we're watching the wrestling show, but they're really not good actors.
No.
Okay.
Generally
Um,
speaking, yes.
okay. And so doing comedy, like you have to have a real talent to get on there and do comedy and to actually do it well and be entertaining. He is one of a few people, a very small handful of people who can do that kind of thing. You cannot just plug some other wrestler in there and do that, right? So not only do people love our truth, he brings something very
Very
unique
unique.
and very that only a very small number of people can do. And now you're taking that off of the show. And now that means the show is not going to be as good. And now will people revolt and leave in anger? No. But will there be some people who are now just less interested in watching it because it's not going to be as good because he's not there? Probably, yeah.
And to your point too, also drip, drip, drip. There's one more thing, another thing. Ticket prices high, ticket prices here. WrestleMania being pulled under the rug after announcing it's in New Orleans. You start little by little, little by little, little by little. Like I said, you don't know when it's coming, but it's gonna come. And again, TKO, I don't think they understand that the wrestling audience is not the same as a UFC audience. It's a very different audience. It's a completely different audience. You know what I'm saying? And fans, it's going to take wrestling fans, WWE fans, to really start revolting and stop watching the product and stop buying merch and stop going to shows before maybe it clicks. I guess we're not there yet, obviously, because it's still selling tickets
No.
like crazy. But we may get there sooner than we realize, though.
And yeah, and it's like you really won't see the effect. I mean, you might see an effect later this year.
Hmm.
Maybe. Um, we may not see an effect until next year. And again, then it's not going to be people revolting. It'll be a slow kind of erosion of people losing interest.
Right.
I think that's what if this thing if it starts to slip a little bit, I think that's what it's going to be. And so where because look, that's 5 to 10 minutes every week that he was out there and he made you laugh. And now that 5 to 10 minutes is going to be taken up by somebody else now who probably is not going to make you laugh. Okay.
Right.
And now it's another, and it's just, again, it's a slow erosion. Um, because I mean, that's what, I mean, yes, I mean, sometimes we do get, there are occasional times where a company will do something that does actually piss people off, right? Like,
Mhm.
I mentioned WrestleMania 34 previously, and then in AEW when they showed the video from the backstage thing, that
Right.
pissed people off, and people said fuck this shit, and they were pissed off and dipped. That happens occasionally. What usually happens with wrestling companies is, again, there's just kind of a slow kind of erosion, and that erosion usually it comes from people not being there anymore, who the audience has gotten grown to love and gotten accustomed to. In previous eras, like I mean, back in the 80s and and into the early 90s, what happened? Hogan wasn't there anymore, right? They didn't piss anybody off, just he wasn't there anymore. Um, right, and then then as the Monday Night Wars ended, for some people, WCW just it was gone, right? That was what they loved. They loved the WCW. WCW was gone. And so you lost some people. Then, Rock and Austin left, or they went, Austin retired and then Rock essentially,
Movies.
and Rock and Austin were gone within like a few months of each other. And those two guys were the cornerstones of the Attitude Era. And then they were gone, right? And then you started to lose people. Um, and then, around 2017-ish, Cena went from full time to barely being around. And you lost some people. And so look, now our truth is not Hulk Hogan or John Cena, but he is one of those people that he 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 added something. He added something unique and added something really entertaining to the shows. And we've been talking about how just this proliferation of stuff that they've had this year. There's just so much stuff now this year. If you're going to keep up with everything they do, there's just so much this year that it's kind of hard. It's almost impossible to keep up with everything, and we're all being kind of in trying to keep up with the stuff. We're all being stretched very thin, which means that just a lot of stuff just doesn't hit, like and so when you take something away that was hitting every week,
Yeah.
um, and now it's just again that it's you're losing some quality here, and
And only that, you're also losing a guy that was there. You talk about like some of the greatest employees in the history of WWE that were superstars. Obviously, the first name comes to mind, Undertaker. He was there 30 years before he retired. John Cena has been there 25 years, relatively speaking, 25 years in comparison. Obviously part time in the last 8, but 25 years there. Randy Orton, same thing, 25 years there. R-Truth, 25 years has been in this company. And Mr. Man, I think I saw a quote that Mr. Man said that he R-Truth is one guy that he would never leave. He'll never be out of his company. And Vince is gone, obviously now, and the powers that be now that run the place. They all they care about is dollars and cents at the end of the day. So I understand, like, because also heard that they'd offer him to stay in the company, but take a lesser salary, and he turned it down.
oh, well, I
Um,
didn't, I did not hear about that.
that's what I heard. But even so, and I understand, like, okay, well, if we cut R-Truth, he's probably make what, maybe $500,000 a year. This is called for that, like that number.
Well,
But
I mean,
but
not
he can
making
bring
more
up
than that.
pay more than that. You can bring up 3 or 4, even 5 NXT wrestlers to replace that salary for less, which I understand from a point of view of dollars and cents. I understand that part. I just don't get, but the thing is the quality, you're losing quality. Like, obviously, I still think R-Truth would be better than right now. I mean, than the unnamed NXT superstar that's on the ranks. That's my opinion. I mean, that's
Yes, well, because they can't do what he does.
no, no one
And
can.
and I'm not talking about the wrestling part. Yes, you can get somebody to wrestle matches, um, but like what he brought to the show, again, you just can't duplicate that. You can't just call somebody from NXT and put them in and plug them in and have them replicate that.
Yeah,
Or you can't just take somebody who's already on the main roster and then move them over and replicate that. You can't. Um, so now my guess is now he was probably making more than half. He was probably he might have been making $1 million a year.
yeah.
Well, because like probably because he was pretty long tenured, and Vince, if you were one of his guys, especially
He'll take care of you.
yeah, especially on the male side of it, if you were one of his guys, yeah, I mean, yeah, yeah, he took care of you. And R-Truth has been one of his guys.
Yep.
So it wouldn't surprise me if he's making like $1 million or more a year. Um, but I
I.
think,
Mm-hmm.
well, I think this is definitely a TKO thing. But also, I mean, I think just kind of philosophy in terms. I think this is mainly a TKO thing, but also, yeah, I don't know. It's just like, but this kind of swapping around of salaries. Um, it's one of those things that, like, somebody can show you that on a balance on a spreadsheet or something, and it may seem like a good idea. Um, but
That's kind of
it's
the
not.
problem too with the TKO thing. This is where we and look, we will always criticize Mr. Man for the things he has done, negative for the company and whatnot. I mean, obviously, those critiques are valid. But this is where the value of Vince McMahon versus the TKO regime. Like, if there's a negative of the swap now, is that TKO and their executives probably don't have a feel on the importance of guys like R-Truth, why they're important to that company, to that roster, to that locker room, why he's so important to the culture of WWE. They just see all they see is dollars and cents. Vince McMahon is a guy that, yes, while he was the owner of the company, was very much plugged in what was going on. He to a fault, he was involved in every aspect of the company, right down to the posters you make. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so that's the disconnect between the two. This is like like Vince McMahon, as big as he was, and as corporate as he became in his later years, he still ran his company like a mom and pop shop.
Yes.
Whereas TKO is Walmart. You're just a number. You're just a number. That's all you are. And in the case of R-Truth, he was just a number to the company.
Yeah, and now, yeah, I've heard people say, well, he's age, he's 50 something years old, and
53.
okay, um, I don't think that's I don't think the age thing is
No,
because
he doesn't even
uh,
look it.
no, well, but they just brought in Jeff Cobb. Jeff Cobb is 42 years old,
Yeah,
and and somebody starting there at 42 years old,
yeah.
Penta is 40 years old, and look, they
Is he
just
really?
brought back Rusev. Rusev is 39. He's going to be 40. They just brought him back.
Their top guys are hitting 40 or across 40 already. CM
Yeah,
Punk
I
is
mean,
47.
Randy Orton is in his mid
He's
40s.
45.
AJ Styles is 48.
Yeah.
So it's not just simply a matter of age. And then they've also released people who were not old at all. They released Cora Jade is 24 years old, and they released her a few weeks ago. They released Indy Hardwell last year. Indy Hardwell is 28 years old, and they released her last year.
Mm-hmm.
So it is not just simply a matter of it's not just age, right? It's not just that. That's that's speculation. I mean, I
Yeah.
think because people are looking for reasons, and um, now look, and this is not to say that they're just. Triple H is involved in the decision making,
Right.
and he d- he does have. Now I think with Truth, because his contract was up, then they might have just told him, it's like, no, we're not doing this anymore with him. But
Mm-hmm.
as far as people who do get released, I mean, I think he is looking at things and saying, okay, you know, I'm not using this person much at all, or I'm only going to use this person up to this extent. So if I have to release some people, then yes, I am going to release somebody. I'm going to tell them to, you know, release these people that we're not using much or that we're only going to use up to a certain level. Um, but I would think it just seems again the fact that he was involved in a lot of stuff and it just happened right in the middle of all of that. Is where it's kind of jarring. And I mean, look, it is bad for the locker room because like look, I mean, we've been kind of sold this narrative over the past
Yeah.
10 years about
It's a and yet.
um we've been kind of sold this narrative over the past 10 years that it's not as competitive, that it's not that, look, the wrestling locker room is extremely competitive. And the only way it works is you got to have some people there who are not trying to be the world champion and who are not, you know, doing everything they can to get into the main event. You got to have some people there who are content not being that guy. Um, 'Cause that's the only way it works. You can't have a locker room full of men or women who are all pushing and striving to be the world champion or be in the main event. You got to have some people who don't care about that because
Yeah.
otherwise nobody's going to do a job. Nobody's going to want to lose. Nobody's going to want to take a back seat to anybody. You got to have some people there who are perfectly fine. You got to have some people. there who are not obsessed with being, the world champion or whatever. Now you do need some people who are, because that's what ultimately makes for, your best matches and, and all of that. But
Yeah.
you got to have some people who are not caught up in all of that, and he's one of those people. Um, so now
And
again,
Rob,
you take him out of the
and
locker
yet,
room.
yeah, and yet again, there's still a. I still think there's a chance he's back.
Um,
There's still there's a 5% part of me, like even with knowing what I know now, in hindsight, last 48 hours, it's still I still think that there's a chance that this can be part of a storyline that maybe they bring him back toward the end of the Cena run here, at some point on the road. I have not ruled that
um,
out yet either.
well, yeah, like we know, like you never say never, especially in pro wrestling.
Right.
Um, you just, you know that. And so yeah, he'll be back next year. Because look, I mean, I expect Braun Strowman to be back in some limited capacity. It's just
Yeah.
that Braun, you know, well, again, his knees are made out of sawdust, and
Yeah.
it's just he can't stay healthy for a prolonged period anymore. Um, but I do think he will be back. Um, so yeah, it's definitely a possibility that our truth will be back, because it's pro wrestling. It's not like one of the differences between, pro wrestling and, quote unquote real sports is, I mean, if our truth was you know, if he was a football player, then this would be the end,
Hmm.
right? We'd see him again at jersey retirement or whatever. So it's not out of the, but I think we have to accept the fact that at least for the time being, he is gone,
Yeah.
and unless he shows up somewhere else. Um, and you never know. I mean, again, he's free and clear. So,
Look, he'll make a lot of money. I'm not going to sit and feel sorry for him either. At the same time, he'll make a shit ton of money on the indie circuit. He'll do shows. If AEW wants to use him, that's possible. I can see it happen down the road. So there's an opportunity for him to make money elsewhere. On the indie scene, doing the show circuit. Of course, he has a lot. He's way too damn talented to be not be doing anything. So I expect him to be doing something in the next 90 days. That's for damn sure.
oh well, yeah, and well, and remember, he doesn't wait 90 days. His contract's up. So, yeah. So I
Yeah.
think, yeah, I think the difference is he can show up as soon as as soon as his contract, as soon as that day comes where his contract expires, he can show somewhere up the very next day. So if his contract ends on a Tuesday, he can show up on Dynamite the next day. Because
Right.
little news item, Mariah May showed up just came out in NXT tonight.
Oh, she did.
Yes,
So she's here. It's official.
yes.
So and
And
away
so
we
he can
go.
look. He can do the same thing. Yeah, he can do the same thing, and his contract ends on Tuesday. He can show him Dynamite on Wednesday,
Yep.
and or he can show up in TNA, because remember, well, he has a history in TNA. He is a former, back when they were still affiliated with the NWA. He was an NWA World Champion. Um, he has history in TNA. He could go. I mean, he
Sure.
could
True.
very easily shoot in TNA. That wouldn't be a problem at all. Um, but so if he wants to keep wrestling, there will be opportunities for sure. Um,
Yeah.
and if I were Tony Khan, I'd bring him in.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Why not? Why
Well,
not?
because for one, I mean, he's worked with a lot of the people who were there, and like the thing he specializes in, I mean, he could do all types of bits, with the Hurt Syndicate. Um, you know, um, I mean, I'm sure. Look, he would be hilarious doing some type of bit with Tony Storm.
Hmm.
and or with Harley Cameron or with Orange Cassidy. Um, there's a plenty. So there is plenty to do with him. Um,
Yeah,
so yeah, he will not be. He won't be without work if he wants to keep wrestling.
yeah.
It just kind of sucks, and as again as a just from a fan standpoint, because again, the show's going to be less good without him there.
Question, without question. This is little running along with the Cena thing was so much fun, so much fun.
Yeah.
It reminded me how why he's so popular in that locker room. It reminded me so much why that is the case. But again, I hope people seen him at some point in any capacity. Although I still believe that he will be back at WWE at some point with next year or so. So, all right, it is time. It is time for our money in the bank rather preview. Um, we have 4 matches apparently for this show. It's going to be taking place this coming Saturday on the Peacock, of course. June 7th, 2025. Um, from Inglewood, California, at the Intuit Dome. The tagline for this show is "The last time is now." Of course, that's referring to John Cena's, run here before he leaves. Again, 4 matches here. First match here, Rob, is goes with the IC title match, a rematch between the champion Lyra Valkyria versus Becky Lynch. Now, here's the stipulation for the IC title: if Becky Lynch loses, she can no longer challenge for the title for as long as Valkyria is champion. However, if Valkyria loses, she will be forced to raise Lynch's hand and acknowledge Lynch as the better woman. I love stipulations, Rob. I love it.
Um,
I don't think you do, though.
it definitely adds something to it. I and it does put some. I mean, like I don't know which way this is going to go because, um,
This one's confusing. This is not even a hard match to pick, honestly, of the
well,
4.
because here's the thing: because if Becky doesn't win, well then, well, it'd be kind of dumb if she doesn't win because then what she's going to go just go
Go away?
win the world title,
Yeah,
right? Which I mean, but the thing about that is just kind of if you look at it from kind of a logical thinking standpoint, if that was going to be the case anyway, why not just go after the world title to start with?
exactly.
Why bother with the Intercontinental, right?
But I
So
think the goal was to get Lyra, get some sunshine on Lyra. And to her credit, for the record, she's done this feud. Has got. I'm invested in this feud now. Like, she's done a good job on her end with this feud.
she has. Now the thing is though, but like I think I've said this before, the real
Yeah,
question with her is how how much are people going to care what she's doing if
which is
she's not
over.
doing something with Becky Lynch?
Right.
Um,
We shall soon see.
and well, the thing, and that's so I don't think they're to that point yet where with her where you can just go off and have her, you know, feud with just, you know, other people, right? I think um now I don't know if she ever don't know if she will get there. I don't know. Um but if Becky loses here, again from a logic standpoint, if she's just gonna lose here and then go after the world title, then what was the point of going after the Intercontinental title?
That makes no sense at
Uh,
all. I got Becky in this match, dude. I just think there's no
I
way that
think
Becky
yeah,
loses
and
2 matches in
also
a
I think
row.
the stipulation it's the problem with that the thing about this kind of stipulation is that if the person challenging doesn't win, then everything looks kind of dumb.
Yeah.
And so I think, because remember that famously that's what happened with Cody in AEW, right? They did that
Which again
stupid,
was the dumbest shit ever. We said he put himself in the corner early on. That was dumb.
right? And it's yeah. So then I mean, I think she wins here. And now I guess the question then is because I think ultimately in the long run, I think it would be better for Lyra to extend the story and have her win the title and have her win the title back, right? I think ultimately, I think long in terms of her long term, you know, as a character or whatever, I think it would be better for her to have to win. Yeah, to have to win the title back from Becky. You have to go through more of kind of a
Right.
character journey,
There's always
I think.
valiant and chase, buddy. He's always valiant and chase. I agree with you on that
Um,
100%. And I
and
think
there's
also go ahead.
and I think because otherwise, if she just beats Becky again and puts her down, then you're kind of back into the same boat where you were with her a few months ago, whereas she's the Intercontinental Champion, but then you got to find, you got to come up with something for her to do that
Right.
people care. I mean,
Well, only that, I think it's more meat and bone. I think Becky wins this match. I think they have a rubber match probably at Night of Champions or maybe even like SummerSlam
yeah, or Evolution maybe.
or main event. Yeah, one of those events. There's a lot of shit going on this summer. Pick your choice. And I think this is like a feud that it doesn't need to end now either. There's real history here. There's that's both Irish and obviously the mentor mentee kind of thing. Those stories always work well in wrestling lore. So I think Becky wins this match, wins the title, and I think the feud will not end. I think they'll have a rubber match, the score to end the score to settle the score, if you will.
Yeah.
Whether it's whatever event they decide to do it at. I don't think it's over. I think Becky wins this match regardless, though, because it makes more sense. All right. The next match here we have, of course, this is probably the main event of the show, which is the tag team match between Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso versus John Cena and Logan Paul. This has shenanigans written all over it, bro.
Yes. Because yeah, Jay and because I think it does. Yeah. We could see the Seth Rollins group get involved
Yep.
because they've gotten into it with Jay a few times.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I do. Yeah, I think this. Yeah, I think this has shenanigans written all over it, and
It's a tough one, actually.
yeah, because I think well, this ends up being the main event, which I think you're right. It will be. I guess it just how do you want to end the show? Like, how do you want to send people home? Right? Do you want to send people home happy with Jay and Cody winning, or do you want to send them home just wondering what's going to happen next on Monday? Um,
If there's shenanigans, it's going to be on the heel side.
yes.
So I'm kind of like I'm kind of like in that place. So I'm picking the heels to win this match.
And also, I think so. And well, the other thing is that Cena's got to keep winning until it's time for him to lose the title.
Right.
So yeah, I think the heels win here.
Yeah. I'll take also Cena and Logan Paul. All right. Now we have the two Money in Bank matches. We'll go to the females first. It is all set. The female side's all set. We have Alexa Bliss, Roxanne Perez, Rhea Ripley, Julia, Naomi, and Stephanie Valkyr. You called Naomi, by the way, on the last episode we did to
Yes,
get a, and
I'm
you were
sticking with
correct on
that.
that.
I'm sticking with that
For
because
for her to win this?
for the win the match. Yes.
Oh wow! Because you called her you called her winning that match last week to get into the Money Bank match, and now you pick Naomi to win this match also too.
I mean, I think from a storyline standpoint, like, because all right, Stephanie and Julia just got there. Um,
Stephanie's good though. I'll tell you that she's
oh
definitely.
yeah, but they both just got there, and then she has no story or her character hasn't really been established. You're just gonna hand her the briefcase.
Yeah, I'm
Uh,
with you, man. I'm going Naomi too. You know why? It makes to me it's the biggest wild card because okay, Alexa gets it. Okay, cool. She's done it before. Rhea gets it. Okay, cool. You don't really
well,
put in front of Rhea because Rhea is going to
Rhea
chase the
does
title
not.
anyway.
I mean, I usually don't subscribe to that. This person doesn't need this or this whatever, but she really does not need the briefcase, Rhea.
No, she doesn't need a briefcase at all. The title, fine, maybe, but not the briefcase. No, I think Naomi's the biggest wild card. I think her having the briefcase puts more shine on her feud with Jade and now Bianca. Bianca's back now, and I guess saw SmackDown last Friday. It
Yeah,
adds more shine to that feud now going forward. So I would say that Naomi winning it will actually do more for that story than anything else.
because the only other person that I would, the only, if not her, the only other person I would pick is Roxanne because Roxanne does have a thing now going, with the Judgment Day thing now,
Yeah,
and
that's a cool story developing now too. Also, her and Liv and
yeah, and then
Finn and
yes, so so there's something there. I think if we're talking about just making good television coming out of it, I think it's got to be one of those two.
I agree with 100%. And I'm also with you. I'm gonna pick Naomi win this match also. So you and I agree on every match so far. That's pretty good. All right, the men's ladder match. We have your 6 participants here, of course, for the contract. Sol Sokoa, LA Knight, Penta, Seth Rollins, Andrade, and El Grande Americano.
Oof.
Like I said last week, the easy answer was I was going to be Seth Rollins. That was the easy answer. But he's like Rhea in this aspect. He doesn't really need it because if he wants a title match with Jey Uso, he's going to get it. It's because he's Seth Rollins. And we're getting to that point where he's going to get that match after they get this Gunther match out the way next week, whether it's SummerSlam or beyond. I think the guy who might need the briefcase more than anything else, and you're probably agree with me on this also too, is Solo Sikoa. Because again, much like Naomi putting shine on that feud with her and Bianca and Jade, Solo having the briefcase now puts a shine on the Jacob Fatu situation in the bloodline going forward. Adds
Yes,
more chaos there. That makes most sense there. Give me Solo Sikoa to win the briefcase on Saturday. What you got?
I think so because if not him, the only other person to win this is Seth.
And why?
And
Why?
because I mean, because you got 3 guys in there with no shot. Andrade, Penta, and Grande Americano, they have no shot winning. If one of the if well, Andrade definitely has no shot, and I think Penta doesn't either.
You can honestly, Rob, you can talk me into Grande Americano getting that briefcase though. You can talk me into it.
If they do, then it's just
Just because of the whole angle with him and how he's winning matches with the headbutt and all. You can talk me into that actually. Not saying
he's
I
not
want that
gonna
to happen, but
he's not winning the world title. With I mean,
you know what it'd be like? It would be like what happened a couple years ago when Austin Theory won the briefcase.
it'll be that. And do we really want that again?
I mean, you can be creative at booking with that. Like he'll try to cash in on the title, and he'll fail. Like Austin Theory failed. So
Honestly, that just goes back to my belief that
you need to retire this thing.
yeah, at least or they pause it for a while. Yes, or the men's briefcase, at least.
It's never going to happen now, buddy, because you know why? This is now a big 5.
Well, I mean, because there was one of those kind of rumors or whatever, and that Triple H isn't particularly fond of it. I just think, I think honestly, okay, I think this is another year, and unless Seth wins it, this is going to be another year where they just burn it off because for the men, I mean, and which means this will be like the 5th or 6th time in the in recent year that they will have just burned the men's briefcase. And I mean, look, my reasoning for them needing to at least take it off the board for a while is that they keep burning it off. So like they're not even they think it's an obstacle. They think it's an albatross. Right.
I see the point there. I would have believed you. I would have definitely been with you but it'd been easier to lop it off if like this PLE wasn't one of the 4 or 5 biggest PLEs of the year. The problem is this is one of the biggest ones of the year, and that's the problem. You can't take something that's so important. Like this is actually bigger than Survivor Series.
Oh, now it is, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's not on level of SummerSlam, Royal Rumble, and Mania, but it's number 2. It's like the second tier.
And I just think that they're coming back into a corner with the men's briefcase because for the past few years, like they have men's champions who they don't want, who are just they don't want to have somebody cash the briefcase in on them with. And again, unless Seth wins it, yes, he's gonna cash in on Jay. And he might cash it in after the Gunther match, right?
Or maybe he'll cash in on SummerSlam after Jay wins or whatever, or gets whatever. Maybe
Well, I
we'll
think,
see.
yeah, I mean, so I think if Seth wins, he will cash in successfully. But other than him, if somebody else wins it other than him, I think they're going to burn it again, and which would mean, it'll be, and this will be like, again, this will be like the fifth or sixth time in the past 7 or 8 years.
When you say burn it, what do you mean exactly to the listeners?
I just have somebody an unsuccessful cash in,
Right. Okay.
um, and just because look, they did. I mean, we're talking 2017, 2018, and then Otis. They took the briefcase from Otis and
I
had the
don't, I
Miz.
don't, I don't, I don't even acknowledge 2020 at this point. But that's actually a little teaser on topic coming forward in a second. I don't even acknowledge that whole era of outside of Roman. I don't acknowledge any shit that happened in that fucking era because nothing made
Okay,
sense then.
but just for my sake of counting here. All right,
Yeah.
so 2017, 2018, 2019, they took it off of Otis. Miz did cash in successfully, but they had to take it off of Otis first.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
22 was Austin Theory. Again, they burned it. In 22, he didn't cash in, and then last year with Drew. That's 5 times already since
But
2017.
I did think that the Austin 3 one was pretty cool because I thought it was really the way they used it with him was actually creative though. Like I don't think this is the thing. Like people always expect okay if the person has the briefcase that it should be guaranteed them to cash it in. Sometimes shit fails, man. Sometimes
Yes,
it's
I
okay
mean,
not to do that. You know what I mean? And I think the
I
way they did
agree.
every couple of years ago was actually smart the way they did that.
Um, okay, the thing is that, well, again, my thing is that they're doing it so frequently now.
Right.
Like if somebody fails, yes, I mean it is good to have somebody fail every few years. But now they've done it 5 times since 2017 on the men's side. 5 out of 8. 17, 18,
Mm-hmm.
19, 20,
22.
23, 24. So yeah, 5 times out of 8, the person either failed or they had to take the briefcase off of him because again, Otis was not going to be the world champion, so they had to get it off of him. So that's 5 times in 8 years. Um, so to me, that tells me that you know,
They see it as a problem, but they can't get rid of it because of the importance of the event in general.
yes,
Yeah. Um, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go solo for
yeah,
this
I'm,
one.
I'm gonna stick with Solo because otherwise, if not, because again, I mean, um, yeah, I mean, I'm going with him because, and I think he will fail. But I think because, well, because he screwed things up for Jacob in the qualifying match. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's going to be some tit for tat with both of them. And so I think Jacob will cause him to not cash in successfully or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm all about making sense, and those two options, Naomi solo, makes the most sense for the stories they're telling right now into the summer here. So
Yeah,
that's
and
mhm.
and again, Seth is if they just want to have him win the belt with the briefcase, then then he's an easy choice.
Yeah, but too easy, way
Yeah,
too easy. All right, one last to get you out of here. We want to. I want to start a new segment here on the show, where we discuss things. What if? We're calling it "What If," and I have a couple things in the my box of topics here that I've been piling up for a couple of years now for topics about things that what if happened. What if the butterfly effect or some certain things happen in wrestling history. So the first one I want to touch, the one here I want to touch on for today's show is what if COVID, the pandemic, didn't happen 5 years ago in 2020? Now, if you could freeze frame where we were I mean, and this is not just WWE, we can look at pro wrestling as a whole. Um, at 2020, at this point, if I'm not mistaken, going into WrestleMania before the pandemic happened, I believe Goldberg was champion. What was I correct about it? Goldberg was champion?
yes,
Was champion? Um, you had Roman on. Roman was around but not doing much.
Well, he wa-
Uh,
he was challenging Goldberg for
def-
the
right. At the time, it was Goldberg against Roman for the title, right?
yeah, and then it was going to be Drew against Brock Lesnar for
Drew
the
against
other one.
Lesnar, right? So we had that going on. Um, AEW just got on TV months before that. They were cooking with gas. Um, so wrestling at that time, I will say, pro wrestling in 2020, and I think a large part of it because of AEW and what they were doing at the time was red hot. It was red hot. Like WWE was, I I was even saying NXT at the time was, to me, the few times I watched NXT in the last 10 years, that was NXT's probably, to me, their peak, 2019, 2020, prior to COVID. So I ask you this, Rob, trying to go back and freeze framing 2020, February, early March 2020. Let's say they continue those storylines into WrestleMania season and beyond. What COVID doesn't have in 2020? Do you What do you think happens? What do you see? Do you see any significant changes in comparison to what we actually got?
Yes.
Okay, what is it? Give me some
Okay.
of them.
Okay. So for one, I don't think we get tribal chief.
You think they still run the gamut with the big dog thing?
Yes, because what happened with COVID, Roman went home, and
Correct.
in going home, he got the kind of leverage to get what he wanted creatively. That's where a lot of this came from. And so without that, I think yeah, it's another big dog run at and it it goes how it goes. Might have gone a little better, might not have. Um, no, I think it wouldn't. I think it wouldn't have been the fact that Drew was getting a big push on the other side, and I think that would have kind of blunted any kind of some of the negativity that might have sprung up normally.
Hmm.
But I think that's yeah, but I think that's what happens. I think we get that and we go. Um, so I think that's the biggest thing as far as on the
We,
WWE side.
by the way, you mentioned Drew. He got robbed more than anybody else because Drew
Yes.
McIntyre, like him winning the title, even in the one fan WrestleMania 36, not surprised. He would have won it anyway. Because he was heating up around that time. Um, I would have loved to seen Drew McIntyre as champion with the crowd as a babyface.
Yes, because
I yeah.
because having to do it without that, I mean, yeah, that took the air out of it. Um, and also, I mean, honestly, that NXT started and the NXT kind of fall off also started happening because of that.
Yeah, they got hurt the most probably of any company because they were red hot in
Yeah,
2020.
and then it just well, because what happened was then during that time, like AEW started, they ran shows outdoors, so they were able, even though it was like a very small crowd, but they were still had a show in front of some people.
Can
And
I argue?
NXT,
Can I argue AEW's material in that era was much better than WWE's?
um,
I was really enjoying the stuff they were doing
well,
without
because
the
they took the, I mean, because no, that was when they were still going head to head on Wednesday night, and
yeah.
that's when that's when they pulled ahead. I mean, because it was back and forth for a while as far as who got a bigger number or whatever. But 2020 AEW pulled ahead,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of that was because their show was in front of they were running their show in front of people, and in NXT you got that weird thing with um the people they had wrestlers behind the hockey glass, and that was kind of weird. And then I think they kind of did a modified version of that Thunderdome thing. Um, and then but and AEW was running shows in front of people, and that's just I think that was a big part of what led them to pull ahead, and then
Yeah. I
so
actually enjoyed. I really did enjoy AW's early pandemic work. Actually, to be honest with you, I would say my AW fandom at the time was actually at its peak around 2020, 2021.
well,
Um,
that's when it was. I think that's when they were. Yeah, well, that's when they were. That's when they were in. Of course, that's when I wasn't watching, but
yeah.
that's. But they were.
Roster aside, obviously criticism aside, because the roster was still kind of shitty. Like he had the top of the roster was pretty good, but yeah, some guy people there just like what making sense. Um, to me, WWE did not really catch on in the pandemic until once again Roman came back and
Yeah, that's when things. That's
right.
because that's when that storyline when it started. That was something that like you felt like you had to pay attention to, and up until that point, like I mean, look, they did have some good things going on, and we still had a lot of good matches and whatnot. But as far as something you absolutely had to, you know, come there every week to see what was going to happen next, that until that happened, then yeah, I mean they were and then also then again their atmosphere was very just it was just weird because you had to think the Thunderdome where a bunch of people were on screens, and before that you had they had they had the hockey boards up and people standing,
They were
in front of
trying
stage.
though. You can't get effort, bro.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Look, I mean, in hindsight, um, I mean, look, you got to take your hat off to everybody involved in hindsight because it was very weird circumstances, and they, they went out and they put on a show. I mean, and they put on a show to the best of their ability and
Mhm.
all of that. Um, it would have just been better, you know, but it was just weird. That atmosphere was just weird.
Do you ever find yourself watching those old stuff again?
Um,
I have not. I really can't. I can't go back to it. I know. I always said I'll go back to some of that stuff down the road, but outside maybe a few reference points when it comes to the Roman stuff, and because obviously he was cooking around that time. Outside of that, though, I can't find myself the energy to go back to watch that stuff in 2020, 2021. It's so foreign to me now. It's so like wow, because wrestling is to me it's about the fans. Now I will say this much though: the one match that I thought did go well with what the pandemic happened is that I am glad the AJ Styles Undertaker match was what the way it was. I think if that was in the ring, as great as AJ is, I don't think you get the same respect for that match and that whole storyline to end Taker's career had it been in the ring. I'm glad it was a cinematic match as opposed to uh, um, a actual match.
yes, and yeah, and look, they had a lot of very good matches. They had a lot of great. They had some great matches during that time. It's just the atmosphere of it
Didn't
just
yeah
kind of took the air out of a lot of just what they were doing.
yeah WrestleMania 36 actually is not terrible when you look at the actual work rate. It's doing great matches in there. It's just that it doesn't have the crowds, and unfortunately, crowds are a massive part of the product. The pops, the cheering, the booing, the chants. That's all part of pro wrestling, and not having that, especially having it the uh the PC, performance center up in Orlando, made it even more like reality. The reality was, yeah, we are living in a different time for now. We're not even in an arena anymore. We're in a fucking PC
Yeah, and then
doing WrestleMania.
I guess the other thing is that going back and watching that is kind of a reminder of
Hmm.
everything that was going on at the time.
Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to think about what else was going on that was. So the Fiend lost his title to Goldberg, which of course Roman challenged for that WrestleMania. Um, So I think what else was going on that might have stuck had it because you said Roman does not turn if indeed that doesn't happen.
Well,
I think Roman eventually does turn. Maybe just not that year.
not
Maybe like a
then.
year or two. Maybe a year or two later.
Yeah, but that the pandemic and the fact that he went home
Hmm.
again, he got the leverage to kind of force that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what else happened around that time. Creatively speaking, that made that that would have changed. I don't think anything else that stands out really. To be honest with you, because
Well, I mean,
WWE at the point honestly was at its low point again. 2019 was actually a low time for them, creatively speaking.
and now outside of WWE, the pandemic pretty much killed Ring of Honor.
Yeah, it did.
Um, it put it in such they were yeah, and they did come back, but they were in such like kind of dire straits after that
Hmm.
that they didn't last for very long. So the pandemic it killed Ring of Honor pretty much. Um, it really hurt New Japan, um, really really bad. So if there's no COVID, I think they would have. Yeah, I mean, well, New Japan didn't go out of business, but they were hurt severely um, by COVID as far as their crowds and all of that stuff. Um, Ring of Honor, well, I mean, it's been a whole, what, 5 years since then.
Yeah,
Who knows, maybe they may not have held on, but I mean, the pandemic basically killed Ring of Honor. So that changes. And then, a lot of this, it really hurt the indie scene really badly.
yeah. I think the winner, the big winner for the pandemic, really was AEW. For me, AEW was the big winner because they were, to me, in my opinion, up until again the Roman turn in August at SummerSlam of 2020, they're putting out, in my opinion, a better product week to week than WWE was because again NXT got hurt massively because of it. WWE was already not doing crazy well at that point anyway, even prior to WrestleMania 36. So they already were kind of like on a low end in terms of creatively speaking. So Roman saved, really, when they say Roman saved the company and saved, yeah, it was literal in many phases. So yeah, I can't think of anything else really in that era that really stood out more than anything else. To me, the big stand for me was that AEW was the better company in my opinion, creatively speaking. So anyway, that's it for me. Anything you want to plug anything we got here?
Well, so as always, every week the Mindless Wrestling Podcast, me, DJ, and Jason,
Mm-hmm.
and so we are gonna, we're gonna dive into this R-Truth stuff.
Yeah, good. Coming to hear that your guys' takes on that one, definitely.
Yeah, and you can hear me every couple of weeks on the Robert Genius podcast. And this week I have a returning friend of the show, Brooklyn Ike. Is back
Ooh,
on, and
when are you
so
dropping that?
yeah,
You
we
drop.
talked some NBA, some WNBA, and we talked a bit about content creating because he has a YouTube channel that he puts some stuff on. So it was
When
good
you dropping that,
talking
man?
about it. Say again?
When you dropping that episode?
It'll actually it'll be up in the morning.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool. So this is in the morning then. Good.
Yep.
Excellent. So looking forward to that one. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter or X at each7. Of course, follow us anywhere, part of Earnestly Podcast. You can check out, of course, the podcast on YouTube at Earnestly Pod, TikTok, Earnestly Pod, as well as IG, Earnstly Pod. Until the next episode, we will talk to you guys soon. We will also be doing a reaction show to After Money in the Bank on Sunday morning. So look out for that. Until the next episode, we'll talk to you guys.